Let's now talk about the key takeaways of the interim budget of India. Joining me is a special guest, Professor Sachin Chaturvedi, DG Research and Information System for Developing Countries, and also an eminent economist joining me from Delhi. Good evening and welcome, Professor Chaturvedi. Now, talk about the budget with an eye on the vision of developed India by 2047. How well does the interim budget document articulate the priorities of the present?
Thank you, Shubhendu. I think the budget articulates quite well, both in terms of sustainability and the international commitments that India should have with partner countries, the larger efforts in terms of overcoming the disruptions that we have seen in supply chain. But also at the domestic level, the budget has tried to address this in three different ways. One, as you just now mentioned, quoting Prime Minister, in terms of employment, sustainability and expectations of the youth. So it has mashed all the three very well. It has also tried to strengthen the capex, the idea of bringing in capital expenditure with 11.11% jump over last year, which itself had seen a jump of 33%. So you find a huge commitment right from 2021 budget till now, where capital expenditure has gone up, infrastructure has multiplied. And if you see the way good governance has come in infrastructure projects, is something very interesting, which the day before yesterday, Department of Economic Affairs released India Economic Review document. And Shubhendu, it very clearly showed that with the consistent monitoring of projects, we could deliver more than 2,000 projects. And these 2,000 projects with 50 lakh crores have given the kind of impetus that we needed for infrastructure.
Right, and we talk about the, right, yeah. Please go on, sir.
The second point, Shubhendu, that I feel is extremely important is in terms of emphasis on innovation, taking science further and giving a push with the 1 lakh crore budget fund that has now been proposed, which would give a huge fillip to startups. It would give major fillip to the new areas of research which are needed. Finance Minister also identified areas related to sustainability, areas related to the different kinds of bio-based industrial development for bioeconomy for India, and she also talked about skills. So all the three dimensions which would benefit agriculture, health, and youth in a major way.
Absolutely. And if you talk about those pillars of India's growth story, the poor, farmers, youth, and women. We talk about women in particular. Women-led development is the philosophy with India is moving ahead. There's an all-round attention. There is focus on education. There's reference to STEM education. There is entrepreneurship, the Lakpati Didi, and health, the very important cancer vaccination, and more.
Yes, if you see adding more energy to bottom is something that many economists have been talking about for decades. For last several years, central government and has been motivating state governments also to add more to SHGs, the self-help groups. And the DDs that you referred to, the target, if you recall, was initially for 1 crore, which expectation was 2 crores, but Finance Minister today has given a huge push to it by announcing 3 crores. And this would be of those women partners in self-help groups who have earned almost 1 lakh per annum. And these Lakpati Didis are now going to be 3 crores. So you can imagine the amount of resources that are getting transferred to the bottom. And they are going to add more purchasing power at that level, not only for themselves, but also for society and the circularity of the economy. So you can very well imagine the kind of inclusive economic growth that we have remarked. She mentioned about the philosophy of development since 2014, and she articulated in terms of how the development has to be inclusive, how development has to touch everyone, and how it can be bringing in all dimensions of our economic development together with less carbon footprint. So that dimension, I think, Shubhendu, is very important. If you look at the way she defined GDP, of governance, development, and performance.
Yes.
So that also narrates quite well how economic development vision is coming up.
On the idea of performance and the kind of report card that the interim budget also presents, how successfully would you say the welfare interventions in the agriculture sector have been able to address the rural stress, and what is there in this budget for the farmers to look forward to?
If you see, there are 5 different sort of announcements that have been made for agriculture. All of them are extremely important, very timely, and needed in terms of building on further with what has already been done. There is a very clear budgetary allocation that Agriculture Ministry had suggested, required, and needed. That part, I think, has been addressed to a great extent. The second is high-tech addition in the agriculture. So the idea of bringing in self-reliance within the oil seeds is something which is going to go forward in a major way. 5 crops the Honorable Finance Minister mentioned in our budget speech. Second is a major push to dairy industry. Specific announcements have been made in terms of not only the quantum of budget that has gone up, but also the nature of technologies that would be providing these kind of facilities to our farmers. The third, and I think extremely important, is the food processing sector, which has also been identified as major dimension of new employment creation, creating values through agriculture. So value added in agriculture had already multiplied. More efforts were made in terms of identifying the priority sector with full focus on connecting it with the nature of microcredit that was required. Fourth, I think, is extremely important, where new irrigation plants have been announced. New budgetary allocation has come in. And I think if you juxtapose the RD budget to this, you find a greater emphasis what Jai Anusandhan that Prime Minister said and Finance Minister echoed that in her budget speech, also brings in the research and development agenda closer to it, along with support for startups. So all the 5 that I see are bringing in digitalization, bringing in greater accountability, and more resources for value addition in agriculture.
And particularly the funds for research and development that you mentioned,
yes.
A fund of about 1 lakh crore. I mean, huge potential for startups, entrepreneurs, and the young.
Exactly, and Suvendu, if you recall, sporadic attempts have been made to push in,
yes.
But the nature of research has multiplied. If you recall, just a week ago, DPIIT issued statistics where it showed patents in 2023 from
yes.
India have gone up, and they are close to 75,000. Can you imagine the energy that we have created in our R&D system? Just last year, India crossed China by publishing scientific papers in international peer-reviewed journals. So what we are seeing in last 3 years, the surge of scientific achievements, the number of patents that are going up, patent process has been streamlined. So a new environment for research is coming up in a major way. Exactly, Suvendu, like what you are seeing in sports, where yes. medals are multiplying. And these are the medals for scientists, where their publications are coming, their patents are coming. And now this mega budget for 1 lakh crore fund that has come in. And imagine 50-year interest-free resource availability would be there.
Yes,
so this would be, I think, a major push for research. And this, Suvendu, if we are seeing jump from 5 trillion to 7 trillion, 5 trillion we would reach, as Prime Minister said, within his term, and that would be much earlier than later. But 5 to 7 would require a far greater and far more focused attempt on R&D and research advancements with innovation.
And I see that innovation is also playing out in a very interesting manner as far as ensuring energy justice to masses is concerned. The manner in which the solar rooftop does not only fulfill your energy needs, it could also help supplant your budget. Then there is wind energy, there is oil-based infrastructure and EV infrastructure.
Exactly, and Finance Minister even gave figure of saving 13 to 17,000 per household, and that would be, imagine, also reduction in carbon footprint at household level. So the idea of life, the lifestyle for sustainable development that we articulated during COP and later on at G20, I think is getting manifested through these kind of a national life mission. It is also about adding new dimension of solar panels are going to give major fillip to it.
And finally, Professor Chaturvedi, what will be the key global headwinds as India marches towards its vision of a developed country? There is, of course, the India, Mid East, Europe corridor that the Finance Minister mentioned, but then there are challenges in the Red Sea zone and elsewhere. How do you see the road ahead?
We should analyze global headwinds at three different levels, and I think we would have to be very clear in terms of subdues and uneven expansion that we are seeing in inflation across the global scenario, and improving prospects for our soft landing would be important. The supply chain disruptions are a major worry for us, and I think, if we see insulating ourselves from the spillover effects of US and other global economies, the autonomy that we require for our policy pronouncements, this government has firmly established that. Be that Basel norms or bullying from IMF, misinterpretation of data, and even blaming us for managing our foreign exchange. IMF has been proved wrong, and we have established India's autonomy in our decision making and defining how we take inflation-related decision and their management forward. So that's point number one. Point number two comes in more from our ideas in terms of how global connectivity comes in. With BRI and with other initiatives, we have been constantly challenged. Red Sea, as you rightly said, has further accentuated the crisis. The delay in ships, even going via Cape of Good Hope, they are taking much more time than ever. Countries, the axis of resistance with Hamas, Hezbollah, and Houthis, all the three together have targeted specific ships and specific entities. Insurance and reinsurance have gone up. So we require new sort of connectivity. And you rightly said the new corridor that is now proposed through land, landing up right in Greece through UAE and Saudis, that would be a major game changer. As Finance Minister quoted Prime Minister, this would be for many more decades a major solution to our connectivity problems.
On that note, thank you very much, Professor Sachin Chaturvedi, for joining us on the News Hour and sharing your perspective.